that feeling of, okay, got it. I even before COVID hit, I worked from home. I have a home office on the top of our home so that I could be home with our kids. And I've been working through Zoom for like 5 years now. So I'm accustomed to all of the wonders that come through Zoom meetings. Secondly, I'm going to skip to slow speed for a second. So once I finish talking about fast speed, but fast speed is that feeling. It can become addictive where you feel like you have to go, go, go. And it can be very difficult to stop using your brain if it gets in this mode of fast speed, wants to keep going fast. So to liken it to the car, if you're driving fast and you're speeding through town, is that the optimal way to get from A to B to where you need to go, going rip roaring fast? Not usually, because if you're going too fast, your car's not going to perform as well as it could if it was going the best optimal speed. And at the same time, your car could sustain damage. The slow speed in our brain is the speed that's being used when you feel tired or groggy or overwhelmed. And I'll liken that to going 15 miles an hour. Can you get to where you need to go going 15 miles an hour? No, you can, but it will take you a really long time and it's not optimal processing. So we might feel that as attention difficulties. We might feel it as distraction. As we age, we might feel it as brain fog, difficulty with memory and thinking. And an increase in the slow speed is the biomarker for dementia and Alzheimer's, which I am going to touch upon. So we want to stay out of that slow speed as much as possible too. And there's brain hacks or brain tips that we can use to be able to do that. And we're going to talk about some of them. Medium speed is that sweet spot in the middle. You know, we'll conceptualize it as 45 miles per hour, 35 to 45 miles per hour. It gets you through town at the perfect speed. You can still take in the view, but you can also show up on time. That medium speed is where we want to be for the most part. So when you're going through your day, you want to feel calm and relaxed and focused. This can show up in your mind and your body, and we're going to revisit it a few times. If you're going through your days mentally, you can be moving slow, but your brain can be going 110 miles per minute. And I know from my parents will sit there, but they are spinning their wheels because they've spent a lifetime spinning their wheels, and they could really benefit from balancing the way that they use their brain, which is going to be a takeaway for us. So just to kind of frame it, we want to stay out of that too fast and too slow of speed, and we want to stay in that sweet spot in the middle. And when we do that, there's a cascade of neurotransmitters that are released. Serotonin for happiness, dopamine for pleasure, oxytocin for connection. Those are the three primary ones. There's more, but it creates the perfect cascade in your system to make you feel calm, relaxed, and engaged. Okay, so clearly that's a very simplistic version of how brains work. And we know that, and it's actually been characterized by many people that our brains are the most complex organ in the universe, because it's, some people say it's like a black box. The black box theory is you don't need to know how it works. It just works, and then you let it work for you. But when you know how to make it work right, you can be happier, healthier, wealthier, more successful and satisfied, again, at any age. And it might look different at the different seasons of our life. When our brain doesn't work well, you're sadder, sicker, poorer, less successful, and satisfied. And actually, those are the words of one of my mentors, Dr. Daniel Amen from the Amen Clinics. And he's a world-renowned psychiatrist who I'm trained under. And that's kind of one of his sayings is happier, healthier, wealthier, more successful and satisfied if you're using your brain right. Sadder, sicker, poorer, less successful, and less satisfied. So it's interesting because for many people, self-awareness around this can be really low, like how you're using your brain. We might not know until you can kind of understand this electrical energy piece. So we're going to get into that, but first let's talk about Alzheimer's and dementia. So I started to tell you that the pattern for the biomarker or the electrical energy pattern for dementia, for Alzheimer's, but even more characteristically, just for cognitive decline, is one of too much slowing in the brain. Too much of that slow speed is being made and used in the day. So that slow speed should be made and used at night when you're falling asleep. It's called theta speed. And so if you have a healthy brain performance pattern, when it's time to get to bed and you're getting ready for bed and you start to feel drowsy and groggy, that's theta being used properly. If it's being used in the day, then you will not be able to think as well as you should. Then when you wake up in the morning, you'll still feel groggy again because you've gone through the sleep cycle. When you wake up, then your brain should kick it into medium gear and be able to get you through your day calm and focused. If something stressful happens, that fast speed should kick in and allow you to think and to be able to course correct. Or if a deer jumps out in front of your car, you swerve, but then you can let the nervous system come back down. So many of us, and we know this from the science, are stuck in these chronically slow and fast uses of our brain across our lifetime. So we know from the science too that dementia is a major concern for people who are aging. I know from working with many people who have a family history of dementia or cognitive decline. So adults, younger adults whose parents had dementia or Alzheimer's, that it is preventable or it can be reduced through the way that you use your brain. And there's technology, which I'll share too. And right now there's technology that can be used at home by yourself without having to pay an expensive fee like it was for me. Actually, last time I was here visiting and for a brain awareness for this series, I didn't use the technology that I now have people get, and it was very expensive for people to work with me. Now you can do it by yourself without having to pay a high fee, which is a beautiful thing. And I will share that with you. But 50% of people at 85 years of age are diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And if you start doing the right stuff earlier, then you really can ward off cognitive decline, because decreased brain function starts decades before because of the way you're using your car. So if you allow your car to disintegrate into that junker and you use a junker across your lifetime, you're not optimizing. If you keep your car well maintained and you drive it, it's always maintained, you're always getting the oil changes and you're taking it in, your car lasts longer and it works better. And it's a good analogy. So our brains begin to decline at the age of 28, which is terrifying, right? I'm 48, so like I already feel I've aged 20 years by now. And before I even knew this statistic, I would tell people that 28 was my best year. Because the way that development works is our brains are developing until approximately 28. And then of course, the minute they stop developing, they start declining, right? They start degenerating. But that's just the cycle of life. But we can use our brains well so that we can prevent that decline from happening as much as it could if we weren't using our cars well. Here's just a couple ideas behind this. The gravity of age is that our brains are in fact slowing down as we age. So theta, that slow speed, does increase as we age. That you can't help. That is happening. But what you can do is you can keep it from slowing down as much as it would by really engaging your brain in a healthy way. Just a couple more statistics. There's 100 billion neurons, trillions of supporting cells in your brain. And we know through neurogenesis that your brain can repopulate and heal the brain cells and create new brain cells. And actually, brain cells are some of the fastest cells in your body in terms of every few years, you're making new brain cells. So your brain that you have today will not be the same brain as it is in a couple of years. You will have made new cells. And that's why using your brain well can be so powerful. But you also lose 85,000 neurons per day because we're trimming those that aren't being used well and we're generating those that are healthy. So there are behaviors to accelerate and decelerate the loss. And honestly, when I listen to the docket of people who will be joining you over the course of the next few weeks, they're discussing all the right stuff. And I'm going to touch upon it just a little after we talk about how brains work. but what you eat really matters. If you exercise, if you get in nature, if you connect with other people, that really is the special sauce, as simple as it seems. So I'm glad to hear about all the people that will be coming to join you. And brain health and longevity is that you can boost your brain reserves across your lifetime, and hopefully you'll be motivated to do so. I actually took some of these warning signs off, so there's not 14, I meant to change the number, but there's warning signs that can tell you, are you driving the junker instead of the Maserati? A number one way that you can feel that, and like I already said, kind of gain more self-awareness, is, are you having more difficulty thinking or keeping up with the things that you liked to do? Now, of course, as we age, we feel different as we're aging, and I've already said, we don't want to be grinding. We definitely don't want to be going, but the things that are important to you, or the thinking that you want to do or you need to do, if that's becoming a challenge, then that's a warning sign that maybe it's time to optimize the way that you're using your brain. Low energy. So even as we age, we should still feel vital. Vitality doesn't mean you feel the same as you did when you were 15. It means you feel vital and engaged in your life. Having a low mood, which goes with low energy, but just kind of feeling in the dumps. And these are some of the things that my parents are struggling with, which is why I hopped on the plane, because they have low energy. They don't feel like doing anything because they've been stuck in their house and they haven't made choices to go into the community and do some of the powerful things that they could do to fire up their brains again. Do you have constant thoughts? And if you, what's that? Oh, what's that? Sorry. Oh, okay, the timing, gotcha, okay. Because I didn't know how long I had to talk, so I didn't want to keep you all here and have you snoozing. I have been a college professor for many years, and the cardinal sin of being a university professor is going over the end of the class. And then a classic thing I would do is, I was supposed to give them breaks, but I thought the information was the most important thing in the whole world. So I'd say, let's push through the break and we'll leave early. So then I made them push through the break and then we stayed late. Not a solid formula. So I didn't want to keep you all here. Constant thoughts. So if you have ever looked at your own thinking, if you've ever felt what's going on up there, I would encourage you, that's one step for you, are you having constant thoughts about things you should do, things that you have thought about for a long time? If your brain is constantly serving you up thoughts, it's constantly in fast mode. They go together, and creating some white space up there, some mental white space, is really important. If you have brain fog, if you just don't feel as clear and as sharp as you used to, if you can't sleep well. So, and I'm not going to talk about the sleep cycle here, and I don't think you have anybody coming specifically to talk about sleep, and we can dig into it at the end if you'd like to, but if you have difficulty staying asleep, more so than falling asleep, if you have difficulty staying asleep, it likely means that your brain is running fast, because it can't slow down enough to get itself through the sleep cycle in a healthy way. And this is plaguing people of all ages. And it becomes a double-edged sword, because if your brain can't get the rest and recovery during sleep, it can't perform at its optimal throughout the day. So insomnia can be another indicator that your brain's not working as well as it could. And I put on here motor issues, and I know you have an audiologist or someone coming to talk about hearing issues. All developmental or degenerative issues come from too much slow speed in the brain. So if you have a hearing loss that is happening in the brain, because there are hearing losses that happen at the ear level, if it's happening in the brain, it's because the temporal lobes by your ears have slowed down. If you have motor issues, it means the motor cortex has slowed down. So if you're having sensory issues, the sensory cortex. Speech and language issues, the speech and language areas. If you have difficulty comprehending, it's the comprehension areas. If you have difficulty with memory, there's memory areas in the brain. And so the very specific thing that you struggle with, if you do, is because a specific area of your brain has slowed down. I'm going to show you that in just a second. So it's very interesting because if you speed that area up, you can perform better and feel better. And again, we'll talk about it. But so any issues like that that would be considered neurodegenerative, you can in fact change it. And that's what speech therapy is. That's what physical therapy is, using your body to rewire your brain. And then I'll share with you the technology. I started as a speech language pathologist many moons ago because next to quality of health in terms of how you use your brain, communication is one of the most important things that people would say. It's number 2 on the things that are important to have a good life, quality of life, being able to communicate. And if you ever saw that movie with Tom Hanks, Castaway, where he's on the island and he's with a volleyball and he names him Wilson because he's going out of his mind because he doesn't have a comrade in arms when he's stranded on an island. Once he gets Wilson, he's very protective of Wilson, and his mood shifts because he has Wilson to connect to. Communication and cognition, thinking, they go hand in hand scientifically. So we know where there's communication, thinking basically is on the pathway right next to it, and they're very closely related. And that's how I made the leap from communication to cognition many moons ago. And thinking about thinking, meta, thinking about thinking and how we can use our brain to think better and then to communicate better and to perform and feel better. And so that's kind of how that started and has grown for me over the years. We're going to think about all of these things. Okay, so thinking about those 3 speeds that our brain uses, there are 3, again, easy ways to think about how you can use your brain. And you should balance how you do this across the day. There's brain boosting activities, brain draining activities, and brain neutral activities. And I just wanted to, one more sidebar is that everything I'm sharing with you has science to support what I tell you. These are not my opinions. So everything is supported scientifically. Brain boosting activities are those that are going to put your brain in that sweet spot of medium speed. So this is different for all people, but there are some common threads that go through what brain boosting activities are. And I'm going to share a few of them with you. And then I'm going to encourage you to think about what your own are, because they have to be salient to you. You can't go out and do the things that I care about because it won't boost your brain. So for example, one of the patients that I work with in the office loved to do needle point. And that put her brain just in this perfect, calm focus. She would do needlepoint all the time. She would work with yarn. If I had to work with yarn, I would end up probably stabbing myself in the eye and taking out all my frustrations on my 6 beautiful children. That would not put my brain in a brain boosting mode. That would very quickly drain me 1 minute in. And it's just the way that my brain works, and it's what's interesting to me. And the things that are interesting to me put me in that mode, and they're different for me than they are for you. And that's why you really have to find the things that are important to you. And at the last slide, I will remind you of this, is that it has to be important to you, not important to your children who think you should do something, not important to your partner if you have a partner. And my 20th anniversary is next Wednesday. I know you all have probably been married a lot longer if you're married, but if you remember how hard it is to be and stay married, especially for 20 years. My husband and I went last night, which is really fun, and it's definitely boosting my brain. Is we went and we bought new wedding bands just and it was really fun for us. My husband got that ring sizer stuck on his hand. True story. Took like 20 minutes to get off with Windex with all the people, and we had a great time doing it. And then my husband is so cute. We're going to Charleston next Friday, and he has our friend Jason remarrying us. It's my husband's idea. And Jason's like, he's going to become certified on the internet. I'm like, we're already married. We're already married. We don't need you to become, an internet pastor to marry us. It's already legal. But just the ideas of putting together some celebrations and making our 20th anniversary special is a project that we've been working on in different ways. I thought getting new rings would be fun. So he's like, okay, let's go do that. And then he's got this Charleston trip. But so it's become a project that we can do together. And I'm going to show you a picture of something that I decided I wanted to do. And my husband's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, I want to do this. And he's like, all right, if you want to do it, I'll support you. And so my thing isn't always his thing. We have shared things. My husband golfs 2 times a week, and he's been wanting me to golf with him. He has seriously bought me like 20 golf outfits. I'm like, I don't golf. And I don't even go to the golf club. Like I don't to the golf course. I don't need a golf outfit, but I'm like, maybe I'll learn how to golf. But that's his thing. He goes 2 times a week and he has a great time golfing, gets his brain in a great mode. But again, that's his thing. So the point is it has to be your thing, and it can be a shared experience sometimes with the people you care about, but it's really good to have your own thing. And going back to my parents, my dad doesn't have one fun thing that he does for himself. He gave those things away over time. And he's been married to my mom they've been married 60 years, more than 60 years. And so he has nothing left. He's going out of his mind because he's been stuck in the house. And my mom still goes out. She goes out to the ladies of Fidelity. And I'm like, Dad, get your thing back, man. And my dad's vision, he's lost his vision. He can't drive. And I'm like, Dad, get a driver, get someone to drive you. So you can go out in the world. You're 81. Capitalize on the beauty of your season right now. And he's not been able to do that for himself. And he is not happy. All I want for him is happiness, for him to figure out what he needs to do, because he's putting his brain in constant extra fast speed because he's totally frustrated with his situation, and he's exhausted and overwhelmed and feels hopeless but won't totally say it. But he has the power to shift that in a moment. He can shift out of that by making a decision to go do a thing that he wants to. And we all have that power. And my husband and I practice that in our relationship, and I practice that in my own world, sometimes to my own detriment, which I will show you in a minute. So the activities that you love to do are brain boosting ones. So some examples are exercise. And exercise is probably, if I had to say, I was thinking on my way over, if I had to rank them, exercise is the #1 brain boosting thing that you can do. And if you plan it so that it's social and it has some level of connection to it, that's a twofer. And if you plan it regularly in your schedule, it's a 3-time bonus because it acts as an anchoring event in your life. And that is a major thing my father's missing. He's got no anchoring events into his life besides doctor's appointments, which, you don't really want them as anchoring. You want those as ancillary. And so if you like to do yoga, if you like to go for walks, even just simple movements, and especially if you can get out in nature to do it, it is so beneficial for your brain. If you do nothing else, that is a really important thing, to anchor it into a flexibly scheduled life. Scheduling your life a bit, and you hear me, flexibly scheduled, because you want to have enough anchoring events, but enough time for brain neutral activities that we'll discuss. Getting out in nature, there's something called Schumann's resonance. And what that is that you've probably heard that you can ground your toes in the grass, if you've ever heard of grounding, or you might have heard of tree huggers, go hug a tree. And actually, I'm listening to Will Smith's new book. It's so good. It's such a good book. But he talks about, he went to Trinidad, Tobago, and there the people were floating in the water. And he's like, what are you doing? And he was all anxious about that because he's in overdrive mode all the time. And his friend who brought him there said that they're resetting their brains and their nervous system floating in the water because the earth resonates at that perfect medium speed. So if you get out into nature, and you unplug from technology and you make sure you come out of your head. This is a tricky one. Notice when you're in your head, not actually in nature, and you're listening to the birds and you feel the breeze on your face and you feel your feet on the ground beneath you, the ground will resonate and the nature around you will reset your brain to medium speed. And so if you do that one time a day, you're resetting your brain back to optimal. And again, if you're moving your body while you do it, that is an extra bonus. So that's the number one brain boosting thing that you can do. Move your body and get out into nature. And and we know, again, it's based on science, fires up your brain in the perfect way, gets the perfect neurotransmitters going, and creates longevity. And that's why you hear it all over the place. And so again, think of the activities that you love to do. My husband plays darts. He plays chess. These are his things. He loves to play chess. He loves to play darts. In wintertime, we do puzzles. We always have a puzzle, and our kids will walk by and they'll just put a couple pieces into the puzzle, and we'll do a puzzle over the course of a couple of weeks. We like to play cards. We'll play 101 as a game. My husband's from Ireland, so he learned this game in Ireland, and we play. All of our kids know how to play. I live by Jordan Lake, and I have 2 stand-up paddle boards, and I can be on the lake with them in under 15 minutes. And I bring one of my kids, or I convince somebody to come with me, and I'll just spend an hour on the lake. And I try to do it every Wednesday in summer. That's like my thing, so that I know and my brain can look forward to that peaceful time. My husband doesn't do that. He went with me one time last year, and he's like, I should do this more. But that's not his thing. That's my thing. And it's a way for me to get out in nature. I love to read. I'm constantly reading 2 to 3 books at a time, because reading is very good for my brain. So choose the things that are important to you. You can rank them and get them scheduled into your life, anchor them in. Brain boosting. Now let's talk about brain draining. Obvious ones. Anything on technology for too long. We can use technology as a brain neutral. Brain neutral is going to be rest and recovery. And you can use technology, if you're going to play some games, or if you're going to go on Facebook. Doing that for under a half hour, under 30 minutes, can be brain neutral. Brain recovery brings your brain down, you rest. But if you're doing it too much, it becomes entirely too brain draining. What people don't realize is technology and screens resonate at 60 hertz. That Schumann's resonance is at 9.83 hertz. That medium speed that I'm talking about is 10 hertz. So when you're in front of a screen, you're putting 60 hertz into your brain through your eyes, and your brain will attune to it, which means your brain speeds up just by being in front of a screen. And so over time, your brain becomes wired, fast speed, and tired, slow speed. So really moderating the amount of time you use technology, if that's something you do. And I'm in front of a screen all day, so I'm literally, the pot calling the kettle black. So I wear blue light filtering glasses, and that works. So that's another brain hack or a brain tip. If you do use the screen a lot, get blue light filtering glasses. It filters that fast speed and slows it down a little bit, for an easy way to think about it. And it can give your brain more longevity in front of the screen. And if not, make sure you're giving yourself breaks. And it's all about balance. It comes down to a balanced life. So what are other brain draining activities? Anything that puts you into that feeling of extreme frustration or feelings of overwhelm. And all of us have things we have to do in our life that we don't want to do, or we have to do. And again, figuring out what those are and balancing them. So like, I'm a mental person. I'm in my head a lot, and it feels really good for me to be there. Thinking's my favorite thing in the whole world to do, being in the zone and thinking about the concepts I like. So my closet is chronically a mess. It is. And so I don't ever want to have to clean my closet. So I have to schedule it in and do it in little pieces so that it feels good to me. Because if I have to clean my closet for 2 hours, that just puts my brain into this brain draining mode. I don't want to have to organize physical stuff for 2 hours. So you know how that goes. I'll do it in 15-minute increments, and then I will reward my brain with a coffee break or something like that, so that my brain will go back to get the next 15 minutes done. And it's all about being able to figure out, like, if that doesn't feel good to you. I do that with my children too. And it's teaching them to, actually, I hired a new person who's working for me, and she saw me interacting with my kids today. She's like, that is not at all what my parents did with me. And I'm like, I'm aware that kids need breaks, and if they go to school all day, they need to be able to have time to chill when they get home. When I grew up too, I came home and I had to do hours of homework without chill time, but I give my kids chill time so they can balance their brain, and they know how to do that. So brain draining tips you into frustration, overwhelm, anxiety, and thinking. Brain neutral activities, they're easy. Take a rest and take a power nap. It really, put the power in power nap, where you're taking it for 20 minutes. You don't want to sleep for 2 hours in the day, or you'll mess up the circadian rhythms. Take it for a half hour and give yourself a break. Resting is the better of the two. Figuring out things you like to do to relax, just relax. And I'm going to show you a couple more examples in a minute, but so you get the idea. Stay in brain boosting, stay out of brain draining, and pepper your life with brain neutral activities for rest and recovery. And even if you're a person that when I say, if you constantly think, and if you have a lot of thoughts, if that's not you, and you feel good and calm and focused, most of us don't give our brains enough recovery. Because I know when I'm in the best spot and I'm optimizing my brain, I'm still guilty of not relaxing enough, not doing nothing, literally do nothing. Like a baseball game is the perfect thing to think of. If you put a baseball game on, it's so long and it's so slow. I'll watch slow TV on purpose. At the end of the night, Jerry Seinfeld has a new-ish show, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, I think it's called. And they just show like slow screenshots of coffee being poured. And then it's just an interaction of him and another comedian at a table having breakfast. But it's slow. You're just watching two people have coffee. And it's perfect to bring all that energy down, opposed to, a high-speed car chase if you're watching that. So you can really slow your brain down in that way. Okay, so the point is, the brain speeds that you use really do control your mind and your body. So if you're buzzing and you're walking fast, you're using faster speed, because that's making your body move faster. If you feel focused, you're in the zone. If you feel distracted, you're using too much slow speed. If you feel relaxed, you're in the zone. If you feel stressed, you're using the fast speed. If you feel depressed, you're using too much slow speed. If you feel engaged, you're using the good speed. So hopefully this pretty simple information is going to help you to figure out where you're at. If you're using the good, healthy speed, the healthy speed is what keeps your cells physically healthy over time, and your physiology, the functioning, healthy over time. The more you're in the zone, just think about it as the Maserati who's getting the tune-ups. You will use your brain as a Maserati for the rest of your life. The more time you spend in the extremes, the more you're making your brain a junker. And that's the real deal. So you don't want to stay in that feeling, which is why I want my dad to get a driver, because it'll shift his brain into this new mode, and he doesn't even know, he can't understand what's on the other side of that for him. But if he could just do that, he'd be in the zone now. He'd be driving around, talking some politics and, all this stuff with someone who is being paid to listen to him. So they have to. So just to remind you, another analogy is like a bike. If it's hard to conceptualize gears in a car, and if you've seen a bike, you're shifting your gears, and you have the ability to control the way that you shift your gears. You just have to learn how to do it with your behaviors and with your thinking. And I'm going to show you a couple more things. So these are what the brain waves look like. So this is what they literally look like in terms of speed. So at the top, and there's actually 5. There's extra fast and there's extra slow, but I just broke them down into slow, fast, and medium for sake of ease. And so slow energy, you can see how the waves are big and loose. And if we weren't approaching, it's already 7 o'clock, I'd make you do the wave with me. I'm like, hey, I used to make people do it. Doesn't go over that well. It does go, there's different types of learning though. What does go over well is you can do it with your own arm, or you can do it when you get home, because it's easy to think about. The electrical energy in your brain is literally going 1 to 3 cycles per second. So the cycles are the up and down. So when your brain is going slow, it's going like this. When your brain's going fast, it's going like this, 30, 40, 50 cycles per second. Medium speed is that perfect in the middle, 10 to 15 cycles per second. So you can conceptualize that, and that's how the electrical energy is traversing itself through the neural pathways in your brain. Another thing that I started to mention earlier is that our brains have been mapped. We know what every area of our brain, what the skill and the ability that it's in charge of. So this area up here in the front of our brain, right up here in the frontal lobe, and they all have numbers and letters. The PF means prefrontal cortex, and the frontal cortex. So up here in the left is working memory. I know it's hard to see, but I'm going to tell you it right now anyways. Up here on the left is working memory and attention. So this area, if it slows down, it's going to be difficult for you to attend. And to working memory is to hold things in your memory to work with it. This area on the right side is impulse control and judgment. And socialization's over here too, in the whole frontal lobe, socialization. If that slows down, those things are more difficult. On the left side of your brain are the speech and language, communication, motor coordination for speech, comprehension. We're called Broca's area, Wernicke's area. So if you struggle with speech and language, production's more towards the front, comprehension more towards the back. In the back of your brain is the visual processing cortex. So if vision becomes more challenging, it's the back of the brain slowing down. We already talked about hearing is above the ears. The areas above the ears are also emotional regulation. So as we get older, if these areas slow down, we might have more difficulty maintaining a positive mood or not flying between moods so much or feeling more irritable. What else did I miss anything major here? Across the middle of the brain is the sensory motor cortex, where sensory integration. So if you have sensory processing issues or motor issues are a little bit further back. But so you get the idea, if you do struggle with the challenge, you can speed that area up through your behaviors like therapy or very deliberate action or using technology. And I'm going to show you. So what we do in the office, my husband and I are also partners in crime at our office. It's called Leigh Brain Spine. It's right by Amante Pizza and the bowling alley, Mardi Gras bowling alley at the corner of 54 in Farrington, right where Chapel Hill and Durham kind of meet, Nantucket Grills over there. The first thing we do when people come in, if they're struggling with some type of issue that is brain-based, we do a brain map. And the brain map shows us all those areas of the brain, how they're using speed. So basically, if an area shows red, the map is supposed to be all green. If it shows red or yellow, it's using too much of a speed. If it shows blue, it's using too little. And this, you can get the idea that this is a map of I don't use the word normal, a typical map. So a typical map is green, a healthy map. An ADHD map or attention challenges are in that frontal lobe, too much slow speed. Depression also has a component of low power to it and too much slowness up in the left. Anxiety is too much fast speed. Migraines and headaches, too much fast and slow speed in combination. But so basically, and I have on the next map, I'll just show you too. So memory and thinking challenges show up in the same way. They show up as too much of the slow speed, and usually there is a low power component, the blue, at a certain point. So as you keep aging, and if you're using too much fast and too much slow, what does that do to the junker's engine? The engine starts to lose power, and it will show up as blue on the map. And then when power decreases, it's harder to influx power into the system in terms of technology and therapy. It's easier to bring down too much slow speed. But the beautiful thing is there's neuroplasticity. And when I started in this field, I can remember even as soon as 20 years ago, when I went to a conference on brain performance, where they would say during the critical period of development, which that's what that chart is, that's when brains are changeable, and after, brains aren't changeable at all. And we know now that's not true at all. Neuroplasticity lasts across the lifetime. Your brain is changeable, and there's a caveat to that, changeable across your lifetime. Now, the caveat is neuroplasticity can be your best friend if you're doing all the right stuff to keep your brain in medium speed, or it can be your worst enemy if you're doing all the wrong stuff to keep yourselves out, your brain out in the extremes. That's why the way you use your brain is critical. And so what happens is you can use neuroplasticity to change the way that your brain works. And so when you do all the right stuff, you get the better brain pattern across your lifetime, or for the rest of your life if you start doing it now. So neuroplasticity literally means brain changeability, and it's its ability to heal itself. So using technology, we've seen that cells can heal themselves and the brain performance patterns can change. So those brain maps that I showed you of ADHD, depression, migraines, anxiety, all those maps can change. And when people work with us in the office, we see their first map and we see their brain change over time. So they're no longer using the anxiety pattern. The dementia pattern isn't as bad as it was, or sometimes it's gone. One of the, I think he's probably 86 now, the oldest or the most up there in years patient that we work with in the office. And he came in, actually his gerontologist drove him to our office. We moved here 9 years ago from Buffalo, New York, and we opened the office, and not long after that, a gerontologist came in with a man who told her he was going to kill himself if he had any more of the thinking problems that he had, because he would put his keys in the wrong place. He would drive himself to the wrong doctor's appointments. And this was 9 years ago. I've worked with him ever since, and he was a professor too. So of course we were kindred spirits. And like I told you, thinking's my very favorite thing. And I will be distraught the day that it starts to slide on me, for sure. So he was really in a tough place because of that. And we started working together, and very quickly all of that cleaned up, because first of all, I used the technology, and secondly, I had him change the way that he was using his brain. He thought he was relaxing in brain neutral activity, but he was spending all his day thinking. And that is a caveat I should also say. When you're using your brain all the time, you can't be in brain boosting mode all the time. It becomes brain draining. You can't be on all the time. And I implied that, but I want to say it explicitly. You have to include the brain neutral activities. So he was just thinking all the time. Even though he had been long retired, he just spent all day thinking about different things. And we added brain neutral activities and brought his brain pattern back closer to the healthy pattern. All the memory stuff went away. And he would come in for maintenance visits. He still has like 50 visits, because back then we were so excited about it. He bought so many visits. I'm like, I'm going to owe this man visits till the end of my life, because he's got so many visits. But because he didn't need them, he could just, and then he started using the home technology that I'll share with you. But then what happened was he had a shoulder injury, and his thinking slid backwards. Because if you get a physical injury, your brain has to apply those resources to heal your body. So he was distraught again. I'm like, this is okay. This is just for a time. It's time to double down on brain neutral activities and come even more out of the thinking, so your neural resources can go to heal your shoulder, which he did, and it did, and he felt great again. And then he and his wife, another time, and just to show you the impact that your body can have on your brain and your mind, another time that what happened was he had to move out of his home that he had forever, for many, many years. And he moved into a home where he could transition into more skilled care over time. That was very devastating mentally for him. And the anxiety and the grief that it caused him sent his brain pattern moving backwards. But again, we used the technology more, and he implemented more of the brain boosting activities as kind of this, I call it episodic dysregulation. Everything I'm sharing with you is called neurological dysregulation. So, he was episodically dysregulated because of an episode in his life. And during that episode, if you take the opportunity to give yourself grace and care for your brain more, it can make it through these episodes of physical injury or of something that's mentally taxing. And as he made that transition, he's doing great again. And so, being aware of that can be really, really powerful instead of allowing himself to kind of fall into this depression. And again, we talked about some strategies to embrace his new home and to make it feel homey to himself, to extend himself grace during a transition time. And so, that's how the neuroplasticity becomes your best friend, when you know how to use your brain well, which you already do. So now you have it on your side. So to kind of wrap this part up is, it's kind of do this, don't do that. So it's really just that easy. Balance your brain and make sure you include recovery. Avoid constant mental consumption. You might not even realize that what you put in your brain, you're truly consuming. So when you have, and you probably don't have anybody coming to talk about this, so I'm going to just share it one more time, is that, you have someone coming to talk to you about nutrition, about the food you put in your body. So being aware of what you put into your mind and into your brain really is important, and realizing that some of it's brain draining, some of it's brain boosting, and really trying to go more on the side of brain boosting. An example of that is if you're on Facebook too long and you're just trolling through it, it's unintentional consumption. And of course, we know that there's lots of science that shows it also gives us FOMO, fear of missing out, and it gives us social anxiety because everybody else is doing better than we are, at least on Instagram and Facebook. I was going to be bold a few years ago and just put all my bad moments on Facebook, but then I didn't have the courage to do it. Like all the times my kids are losing it, or the times I'm losing it, like, wouldn't that be just the anti-Facebook? I only put my bad moments, not the ones of my beautiful family that I literally had to rope everybody to go to the movies. I had to pay some of them to come to the movies so that we had a family time together. So remember, time is your greatest resource beyond your brain performance. Time, you can invest your time in what you do. And that's going to be a takeaway too. Not waste your time, getting intentional. And that's why when you do exercise, you're investing your time in your brain and yourself. And that's a really important one. And eating well too, we've already started to talk about that. And not overindulging, because that's something that we do, because when our brains are out in this extreme, we want to watch more of something. And we want to eat more, or we want to spend more time hanging out. When we're on purpose, we're in that medium zone, and we don't need to do that. We don't need to. Okay, so here's a list of kind of just breaking down some of the things that I already said. Nutrition's key. So some of you might not know that recent science has shown that there's more neurotransmitters in your gut than in your brain. And so really what you eat fuels your brain, not just theoretically, in actuality. So you have someone coming to talk to you about that. Mental workouts. So I've talked about not thinking too much, but on the other end of the spectrum, if you're not challenging your brain in a new way, I encourage you to do that. So finding a new skill to do, finding something new that really challenges you a little bit. We stop doing that. People stop doing that at some point in their life. And every year I do too much, honestly, but every year I'm learning new things, and I'm always trying something new so that I know that I'm pushing my brain in a new way and I'm using new neural pathways. So mental workouts, and thinking about the things you like to do, including that, and then physical activity. Sleep, we already talked about. Physical health, supplements. So I'm sure the person who talks about nutrition, our food no longer gives us what it did 50 years ago. 50 years ago, the soil was better, the water was better, the food was better, and it's hard to get all the nutrition that we need. So vitamins and minerals can be important. Organizing your day, anchoring events, loving, satisfying relationships. And, if you're not squeezing all the joy out of the relationship you have, it doesn't mean you ditch the relationship you have. It means you find a way to squeeze more joy out of it. I was talking to my sister yesterday, and her husband are having some challenges. And I'm like, he said when I went, this is what my sister said, my husband said, when I was going away, he was glad that I was leaving with my girlfriends. Like, it sounds like that man needs a break from you. It doesn't mean he wants you gone forever. I went to the mountains for 6 days by myself in the fall. I had never done that before, and it was magical. And it took literally 3 days for my brain to come down. The opportunity came up, and I'm like, I'm going to do this. And that without my kids, my husband had never watched our kids for that many days, but now they're all teenagers, so they can watch themselves basically. But when I came home, it was refreshed and renewed. You got to miss each other a little. So it doesn't mean that, it means find ways to have loving, satisfying relationships, have a positive peer group, and you're here, so you already have that, but making sure you keep those connections going, having the appropriate amount of anxiety. So we already talked about not having too much. My daughter calls it nervous sighted. It's from My Little Pony. If you've ever, my daughter rides horses. My husband took her tonight so I could be here. And every time we're pulling up to the barn, she's 11, she says, Mom, I'm having that feeling again. It's the perfect amount of anxiety. And science proves this. You need to have a little anxiety to fire up your brain, or it starts to wither away. And so picking something that gives you a little bit of nervousness. My husband and I went to Grandfather Mountain, and we were driving up the last part, and it says hairpin curves. And he was funny because he goes, I'm getting anxiety right now. And he's not really an anxiety kind of guy. And when we got to the top, he was all excited with himself. And then we went for a hike on Grandfather Mountain. It was way more rocky than we thought it was going to be. And we're both like, maybe we should turn around and find one with a path, not all these rocks. But when we got done doing it, we were psyched with ourselves that it was more challenging than we thought it would be, but we did it. And so that's the nervous sighted piece. Make sure you have, that you're not spinning out of control, but you're not just in coast mode. And we know that science supports when you have purpose and you're nervous sighted, it can be really powerful. Manage your stress, manage your time. Ants, if you haven't heard this is another Dr. Daniel Amen. Ants are automatic negative thoughts. They come marching in. The ants come marching in, and it's our job to be aware of them and shift them. And I know some of my clients detest when I use these two words. You have the opportunity, that one they really loathe, to have a framework shift. And I try to do this as much in my life. When there's challenges, I turn them into opportunities. When I feel myself being frustrated, I say, where's the growth moment in this and what can I do? And most of the time I'm successful because I've been teaching myself to do that. It happens every time an automatic negative thought comes in, but I have less of them and I'm able to shift them. Healthy mind diet, we already talked about, and you can have your brain mapped if you're interested, but the technology that I'm going to share with you, if you want to get it for yourself, shows you how your brain is performing, which is really cool. And so basically, after you fire up your brain in the right way, you can take a map that has blue and red and make it green at any age. That's what neuroplasticity is, through your actions, through your thoughts, and by actually training your brain. Training your brain is just like Pavlov's dog. And if you've heard of this, Pavlov was a scientist where he'd ring a bell and the dogs would salivate when there was food. And then he took the food away and he would ring the bell and they would still salivate. It was the first time that they basically proved, this was over 120 years ago, that they proved that brains could be conditioned with the proper stimulus and the proper reward. And so what Pavlov did was he coupled those two things together, and then he could take the food away and it would still happen. That's how brain training works. And now we have the amazing ability to do it very affordably at home by ourselves using technology, which is awesome, and through our actions and our thoughts. And I like this because it says, it's a cartoon in the corner that says, watch what I can make Pavlov do. As soon as I drool, he'll smile and write in his little book. Just totally true, right? The dogs were conditioned and then Pavlov became conditioned, because we are conditioned. Our brains can be absolutely conditioned. And that's kind of the programming that I was talking about. My father's following his old programming. He doesn't like to spend money. He doesn't like to take help from other people, but he's moved into a new season that the only way he's going to get the things that he needs right now is to get help from other people and to spend a little money doing it. So he has to come out of his old conditioning and to be able to put a software update, as I call it, and to make a new move so that he can be happy throughout this last season. And as we age, I think this becomes even more important. And I know I'm doing it again on a constant basis in my season of life. As things shift for me, because I'm aware of this stuff, I'll think to myself, what do I need to do now that maybe I haven't done in the past to be able to create the life that I'm trying to create here? And then when I do that, I keep my brain in that medium speed. And my husband and I have an activity we call tolerances. What's something I'm tolerating right now? And if I'm tolerating something, what can I do? What's in the onus of my control to fix that thing? And so at different times in my life, it's like, oh, for a few years there, I drove my kids around all the time. And I was just spending brain draining, talk about brain draining, drive 5 kids around all day, every day to the things they need to get to. And I enjoyed driving to a certain extent. So then I hired a girl who we're still friendly with, who drove them around for a couple of years. And of course I'm like, I'm paying someone to drive them around. That like feels so anti-parent, because I pride myself on being a good parent, but to be able to be a good parent, I needed someone to drive them some of the time. And it allowed me to be the best version when they came back home, and it paid itself off in dividends. Okay, so neurostimulation, brain boosting, and that perfect nervous sighted is called neurostimulation, and it literally creates new neural pathways. It can take dormant circuits that aren't being used or impaired circuits that no longer work, and you can stimulate them through light, through sound, through movement, vibration, through magnets, through electrical stimulation. This is the picture of me when I took motorcycle lessons this summer. And I had always been dying to ride a motorcycle. No, I did not tell my parents. I told them I was taking the lesson. What I didn't tell them is that I crashed the motorcycle. But it was not my fault. I was very, very good. This is the story, and I will give you the short version. It rained. I went to Pinehurst, and I did the driving on Friday and on Saturday. It rained really hard Saturday, and they had to take me off the range. So I'm the first one back up Sunday morning. They did not blow off the range. There was 1 million pine needles. And so I get on the motorcycle to complete the turn in a curve at a medium speed, and I completely wiped out. I did really bang my body up, and I did have a concussion, unfortunately. But I have the technology to deconcuss myself. So thankfully, and I will share it with you in just a second. So of course, I was thinking about learning how to shoot a gun too. That's the 2 things on my list, and I have not done that one because I'm like, the next things I'm going to do are going to involve injury less. But that's something I had always wanted to do. And I honestly don't regret, I obviously regret getting hurt, but I don't regret doing it because it was really exciting for me. I bought a helmet, I had to buy the gear, I had to make the arrangements. It became a project. A project is another word, a takeaway for you. Get a project going if you don't have one that makes you feel a little excited, makes you feel a little nervous. And I stayed in Pinehurst by myself, and it was really, really cool until the wipeout, but I still don't regret it. Neuromodulation is sustaining those new neural pathways. So when you're building them through your new fun habits, you will also be able to create the balance. So a balanced schedule is one way of doing it, but brain training is another. So this picture of this gentleman is the technology that can be used at home, and it's called a Muse, M-U-S-E headband. I don't sell them. This isn't a plug to buy anything, but we do have, if anybody becomes interested, I'll have Jamie send Latanya the link. We have a link that people can get 15% off, because I tell people, I work with people all over the world. I have a YouTube channel. I have 2 YouTube channels. So I talk about brain stuff and all the different challenges that people have on my YouTube channels. And so now I work with people literally all over the world. It's very exciting using this technology. And in the United States, this headband generally costs $250, but it'll be the best $250 you ever spent. And I have mine. I use mine constantly. Jamie has one. She uses hers. My kids use it. My husband actually just bought his own because he didn't want to have to keep looking for where mine was. And what it does is it provides neurofeedback. So Latanya told you that I'm a neurofeedback practitioner. People used to have to come into my office. The sessions they still are. The sessions in the office are approximately $125 a session. Muse took the one most universal protocol and put it into this headband. And when you put the headband on, it has 5 sensors. It has 7 sensors, actually 5 across the frontal lobe and 2 in the temporal lobes. And when you use it, you listen to a soundscape, and it provides feedback to your brain, telling your brain if it's in the medium speed or if it's using too fast or too slow. It is the wave of the future of healthcare. Harvard actually has on their website a post by a neuroscientist from Harvard. If you look it up, Harvard Science in the News, neurofeedback. there's a post saying that neurofeedback is the wave of the future to be able to help people with the majority of their mental and physical challenges, because they all are brain-based. Most of them are brain-based issues. And so, you know, with that 15% off discount, it becomes $220 or something like that. And it's neuro meditation. Now, if you don't want to get the technology, and I will tell you, I sent my parents one, and my mom took it out. This is a true story too. I go to visit them, and my mom takes it out and puts it on her head with the headband going like this. And she tells me she hasn't used it in a while. I said, dear God, I hope you haven't used it in a while, because that's not how it goes on, Mom. She's like, it is dead. She doesn't even know where the charger is. But this, I'm telling you, that's all the wrong stuff. Because if she used it, my mom does not feel well. She has a lot of health issues, and most of them could be avoided if she doesn't eat well, you know, she doesn't do what she needs to. If she was doing what she needed to, she'd feel a lot better. But if you don't want to get the technology, you can do the same thing with your own mind. It's just a lot more difficult to do it without the feedback. And again, start with 5 minutes of doing nothing, literally nothing. Sit on your couch. It's best to do it in the morning when your brain is not totally going yet, but it's awake enough. And sit on your couch for 5 minutes and think of your thoughts as a ticker tape and watch them go by, but don't grab them. And if you grab a thought and you start to chew on it, put it back on the ticker tape and let it go by. And an interesting way to engage with this is see how many of them you have and slow it down. Then once you do that, focus on your breath and just say to yourself, in, out. Because if you're saying in, out, you can't have any thoughts. If you're focusing on in and out, you will stop all the thoughts that should be coming, and you will decrease the fast, and you'll be engaged, so you'll decrease the slow. And again, it's a way, there's thousands and thousands of studies that prove that meditation works, not only to keep your brain healthy over time, but to bring you out of these issues that are caused by the fast and the slow speed. It's super important. And if you don't engage in it, tomorrow is the day to start for sure, because it will help you. Then lastly, so we talked about neurostimulation, neuromodulation, and neurorelaxation. And I like this picture of the girl blowing bubbles, because you know, you can rest and you can sleep and you can relax, but you can also just do things that are completely mindless and fun. And blowing a bubble is a perfect example of that. It doesn't require any thought, but you are engaged and you're moving around. And you can think of the things that you like to do, or what I do, because I do have so many children, is I'll kind of be around them while they're doing the things that they like. And my son likes to play basketball, so I'll go down and I'll just kind of shoot hoops with him, but I'm not thinking about the basketball moves. I'm just moving my body around, getting the ball anytime it comes to me, and trying to get it into the hoop. So it's really mindless, engaged time. And that is amazing recovery. If you haven't done anything like that, how refreshed you feel after spending time, but you're not thinking hard, and you're not making points in a discussion, you're just being there. It can really help with recovery, and blowing a bubble is a really good way to think about it. Okay, last slide to wrap it up, and then I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any thoughts, is to stay on purpose. I've basically been saying that throughout, but each one of us has a purpose that innately we have in us, and it stays with us across the lifetime. And that purpose might be shown in different ways at different stages of your life. But I know that a lot of times as we age, we forget what that purpose is, or we stop doing things surrounding it. And there's a body of work called inner child work, if anybody's heard of that before. And an easy way to tap into, it's quite involved, but what it means is that you think back to that inner child, that 5-year-old you. What did 5-year-old you want to do? What did 5-year-old you enjoy doing? And making sure that you do those purposeful things. And we know that this is important. And actually somebody said it in the introduction, because people who are on purpose live a lot longer. I think the average is 7 years longer, a lot longer. And that is lacking in my parents' life right now, which is such a bummer to me. My father was a Pepperidge Farm distributor. So it's not like he did massive amounts of, he actually built a very thriving business, but he would go out to all the stores and he would chat everybody up. And at Target and at Walmart's where he lived, my dad owned half the Buffalo area, and he literally knew everybody. And they would save the end caps up at the front by the registers for him. That's like prime real estate. And he knew everybody, so they would save that for him. Then when he retired and when he stopped being able to drive, he sees nobody. And that was what kept him alive. You know, if anybody was pregnant, he would get them bibs and bring, you know, the young girl who's going to have a baby some bibs. And, you know, she would light up with the thought and he would light up with the ability to give to her. And so, you know, if he thought to himself, my purpose is to go out and to connect with people and shed a little light in their lives, and he could spend the couple bucks to get the driver to go and visit those people. He has probably thousands of people he could visit. He could go to every store and see them. So that purpose, when we tap into it and we never forget what it is, and it can change, but when you think, it can change the way it manifests. When you think what it is and you start doing that again, if you've lost sight of that a little, man, does that fire your brain up in the right direction. And survival mode is that fast and slow speed. It's like, I've got to go do my life again. I've got to get up and do my day again. And if you feel that way, you don't feel a little jazzed up to do the thing the next day, you're in survival mode to some extent. You're using too much fast speed or too much slow speed. Thrive mode is creation mode. So if you get up and there's something you're going to create and go contribute, that's what purpose is. Your brain can serve you for 7 years longer than it would if you didn't do those things. So that really is a key to keeping your brain in that performance mode. And if anybody wants more information, my husband and I have a practice, which is called Leigh Brain Spine, but I also have an internet-based business, which is at drtrishleigh.com. And again, it's not a shameless plug, but I teach people. I've been a university professor for a really long time. And now what I do is I offer digital programs where people can take courses from me to learn how to control your brain, is what I call it, so that they can learn to control their brains and to be able to become the best version of themselves and stay that way for the rest of their life. So hopefully you have found value in this, and this is how your brain works. So when the nutritionist comes and tells you not to eat potato chips, but instead to eat protein and rice, why is it? It's because chicken and rice put your brain in medium speed. Potato chips put your brain in extra fast and extra slow speed. When everybody who comes to visit you tells you the what to do instead of the what not to do, it's because the what to do's optimize your brain performance medium speed. The what not to do's, they will put you in the wrong mode. And that's the takeaway. And it should stay with you for the whole rest of this series, hopefully. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it to keep the mission going. And if anybody has any thoughts or questions, I'm happy to answer them. I could probably answer any online. I don't know if you do that, but yeah.
My husband wears earbuds all the time. There is science out yet showing a link between always having electromagnetic radiation going into the brain, how it affects the brain, and so thoughts, maybe cognition.
Yeah, and I don't know. I know there is science, and I know science on, sure. Oh, let me repeat the question. So the question is for people who, my children included, who use AirPods or earbuds all the time, having them in your ear, especially close to your brain, is that something that scientifically is shown to be bad? And so what the short answer, and there's more and more science coming out on ear or AirPods, the ones that are Bluetooth connected, but they do produce an electromagnetic field. So EMF, and if you've heard about EMF, electromagnetic field, having an EMF near your brain is not good for your brain long term. So I'm sure there's going to be, nobody wants to hear science, you know, that's why one of the things I half joke about saying is I'll tell people what they need to hear instead of what they want to hear, because everybody wants to hear AirPods are fine for us. But, you know, again, moderation. And there are, trying to think what it's called. There are pieces of, they're not tech, but they're basically EMF blockers that you can purchase. And I think the one that I'm thinking is called, it's called a something link. LINK, and you could put it next to your technology so it blocks the EMF, you know, so, but moderation with the AirPods. And then if they're connected by a wire, they don't have the same EMF because the EMF comes off the technology. And there's tons of science that shows that electromagnetic fields are not good for us, but we're around them at all times. And what it does basically is it does exactly what I've been saying the whole time. It'll put your brain into the extra fast and the extra slow mode. And so it creates anxiety, it creates attention difficulties. A lot of the challenges that people have, they don't realize it's from technology. Yeah, sure.
From the light filtering classes, what would you recommend any, or are they all the same?
They're you can just order them online. They all basically have, they're not high tech. So the question is, blue light filtering glasses, do you have to get expensive ones? And really it's the quality of being able to see through them more so than their ability to block blue light. But, you know, I have 5 teenagers, so I just buy lots of them off Amazon. They break them, I buy them more. But like for me, I bought mine through Warby Parker, which I like Warby Parker because it's a good ethical company that's trying to bring glasses to people at affordable prices. So I bought mine at Warby Parker, and mine are really good quality, so I can see through them well, you know, so you can find them there. But it's mostly having the ability to filter the blue light. I think that might be. I was going to say, I'm going to look in the chat right now. I don't think so. I think they were just 3 previous questions about getting rolling.
When it comes to the brain map, how is that actually done? What's the cost of something and the benefits of having it?
Yeah, sure. So a brain map is called electroencephalogram. It's actually EEG. So what it does is it reads how every area of your brain is using electrical energy. And I forget, they changed, actually in the office because of COVID, they recently changed the pricing to a much better price than it always has been. And I forget the pricing off the top of my head, but I think it might be $299. Don't totally quote me on that. It's like $200 or $300. And that's very comparable for what you would find it anywhere. But the benefit of it is that you can actually see how every single area of your brain is using speed. And so you can see which areas are slowing down. You can see which areas might be running too fast. And then of course, like I showed the maps of different types of conditions or symptoms. They basically come together, and everything that someone struggles with has a brain map pattern that's associated with it. So those can be easily identified by my husband and I. So we can look at it and go, okay, you know, people think it's creepy. They think that we can peek right into their brain, because I'll say, you know, it seems like you're struggling with anxiety, and so when we see that in your brain map, it can be optimized. That's the true benefit. And so it's cool to see it, because we do have a lot of people who want to come in and just see what their brain is doing. But the way I think of it is that, you know, investing in being able to see something is one thing, but I always want people to already have it in their mind they're going to invest in optimizing it. And especially now with being able to purchase your own technology and be able to do it yourself, because I switched my approach, and now I just tell people, when I half joke it's a terrible business model, but go buy that and use that at home. And if that's not working for you, then we can ramp it up to more professional types of services. And the way that we have our services, we stagger them by cost and by the amount of support someone needs. So the real benefit is you can actually see, you don't have to guess. And the things that I can see auditory processing, I can see where if people have had a stroke, where the areas of the brain have been impacted. I work with people with traumatic brain injury. I work with kids that are adopted. They have a brain pattern of reactive attachment. Like you wouldn't even think, you know, that adoption and that can be seen in a person's brain. It can. Parkinson's, you know, like all neurodegenerative challenges have a brain map associated with it. So you can actually see what your brain is doing, and then you can change it. And it's pretty awesome. I think one of my sons asked me back when Obama was president, he was doing a project, and the question was, what's one thing you think the president should do that would make the biggest impact in the world? And I said he should get every person a free brain map, because then everybody would know. People wouldn't say, my son's trying to date this new girl now, trying. And she's like, I have ADHD. And I said, do you know you have it for sure? Because out of every 20 people that come into me that have been diagnosed with ADHD, 5 of them actually have the ADHD brain pattern, because it's just diagnosed based on symptoms. So EEG, psychiatrists are adding EEG to their office because it's quantitative, it's measurable. It's actually called QEEG, quantitative electroencephalogram, and you can just see it and then you can change it, which is amazing.
I'm a caregiver. I've been a caregiver for 4 years. And when I go to sleep at night, how do you relax? I mean, how do you turn your brain off when you are constantly trying to listen out or...
Yep, that is a really good, unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for your question, but because to be vigilant, which to be a carer or caregiver, you have to maintain a level of vigilance. And so when you have to keep your brain in fast mode, you won't, by being vigilant, you won't allow yourself to actually enter into the sleep cycle. And I work with a lot of people who are in a similar situation, who are caring for people. And so do you have any nights off from that or no? Do you have any support? Like, again, a way to attempt to do that is to get some support so that your brain can come down 1 or 2 or 3 nights a week. And I know it's less than ideal in terms of figuring out how you can accomplish that, but it's really important for the longevity of your brain.
Well, you go from job to job and work different shifts. You work hospitals, you work, sometimes you work first shift, second shift, third shift. You never work the same shift all the time. So
Yeah.
I was actually diagnosed one time with sleep deprivation and severe stress.
Yeah, adrenal fatigue. Your brain and your body will go into adrenal fatigue because you...
And you just go between jobs, so
Yep.
once you get your body straight from one, and you take another job, and you just...
Yep. And so the way I think about it is, in the ideal world, you try to create a life where you can have circadian rhythms, because if you're doing that, there's no circadian rhythm to the way that your brain is being used and then impacts your body. And you can do that for a time, but it will be difficult to do that for a long time and to still be well. But then the second thing is that if you can come up with compensatory strategies within doing that. So I work with one family where the daughter has seizure disorder. So her mom's always on hyper alert too, in case something happens in the night. But what we did was try to come up with a system where she knew she would be alerted. And so they would put an alert system in her mom's room so that she didn't have to listen. She could fall into deeper sleep, knowing that if anything did happen, she would be alerted and would be able to come out of that. And that's a way that you can compensate for that, is to come up with an alert system so that it's so loud it jars you out of sleep, but your brain knows you can get into sleep because that will happen. Oh, I know it, I know. My first 4 kids are all a year apart. So literally that's like 10 years of raising babies. And then my last daughter is 4 years after my 4th son. So I can totally relate, because I was literally exhausted for a decade. But you have to find it. Yeah, do you have a thought? Sure, yeah. Yeah. I love it. And that prayer is really powerful. Prayer, put your brain right in medium mode if it's salient to you. And so, But, you know, finding a way, I've worked with so many people, like if I was working with you, I would keep messaging that to you until finally you could allow yourself to make a change in your life. And I know you don't think you can, but I've worked with lots of people. I'll give you one example. I worked with a gentleman who, he was 2 years from retiring from the prison system. He was a prison guard in the yard. And he had so many problems from being in hyper-vigilant mode in a prison yard. That's like red alert. You know, he'd work 15-hour days. So I said, you know, he was only 2 years from retirement. I'm like, for 2 years, you could probably do this. But, you know, he had tinnitus, tinnitus ringing in the ears because his temporal lobes from emotional regulation were running so fast and slow. So he had constant ringing in his ears. He's like, I don't think I can do this for 2 years. So he used the headband. We did neurofeedback. And then the first compensatory strategy that we did was he played basketball in the yard after all the inmates went in to bring his brain down before he went home. So he gave himself a behavior that was mindless and brought his brain down and burnt off some of that anxiety. And that totally worked to help him. But I still kept messaging to him, like, if you're actually going to get better, like, we might need to do something. And he has a brother who's autistic, and his real purpose, his passion, was to set up homes for adults with autism. And so what he ended up doing was, in the prison, he put in to be shifted to drive the transportation van, which is the safest job in his prison system. He got himself out of that hypervigilant mode. For the last 2 years, he did that while he got on purpose setting up the idea for those homes. Total game changer in how his brain was used and his life. Probably saved his life, because if he would have stayed in the yard with no changes coming for 2 years, he would have tipped into even worse stuff. So I would keep encouraging you to try to find some sort of regular circadian rhythm to the schedule. I know it's not easy, but I also know that if you want it bad enough, you can create, and you have to learn to create new things. And then get an alarm or alert system so that it alerts you, so your brain can really try to shift down.
Wow.
I don't see any. Oh, so someone wants to know what the test is called. It's called an electroencephalogram, EEG. And if you look it up, it will show you that EEG patterns can be identified. And that's what someone in the chat wanted to know. Yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leigh. And we appreciate you taking the time out to come and hang out with us tonight. We really enjoyed you being here, and I'm pretty sure we learned a lot tonight. I would like to remind you, you have 2 sheets in your folders. If you could please fill out your post survey for the Brain Health Academy, and then also fill out your brain health satisfaction survey for Dr. Trish, and get those and leave those either here on the table right here, on the stage, and I'll pick them up later. Again, we want to thank you for coming out tonight. We look forward to seeing you next week. We have a long time together. So I'll see you next week. I think next week we're doing nutrition. And we also have a wonderful exercise piece to that. And Alicia Reeves is in the back, and she'll be doing a short exercise presentation for us as well. So I'll see you guys later. Be safe. And for you guys on this Zoom, thank you for coming as well.
Thank you.
I would like them today, but you can't. Someone said thank you. So if you're on the Zoom and you're wondering about the post evaluations, they are in your email. All of this, they're in your email. They are on Google Docs. So you can fill those evaluations out online in the last email that we sent out to you today around 3:30. You're welcome, Karen.
Let's see.
LaTanya,
Yes.
this is Pam Williams. I'm wondering if you can facilitate getting us the coupon for that headband.
Yes, I'll make sure I can get that for you and send it out to you.
Great, because she mentioned someone named Jamie. I don't see a Jamie that was in the program.
I'll get it from Jamie. She's sitting right here. She'll send it to me tonight or tomorrow, and I'll have my intern send it out to you as soon as I get it, okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This was great. Thank you.
I'm glad you're enjoying it, Mrs. Williams. I will send it out to everyone. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, please pick up a box of Chick-fil-A, so we won't waste any food. Alicia, I would like to see what yours is doing. To pay for you? Right, absolutely. It is. Please. Pam, Ms. Williams, or Mr. Graham, do you have any questions?
Nope, I'm good. You answered all mine. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to make sure before I end the Zoom that I've answered all your questions.
Thank you very much. Look forward to next week.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.